Mr. Hunt, are you with us yet? Okay. We'll do the flag salute. Eugene, you want to lead us in the flag salute?
Okay. Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Eugene. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll motion to adopt the agenda.
We have a motion by Mrs. Pope to adopt the agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mrs. Anderson. Since we have some who are present and some who are by phone, we will do this by roll call. Mrs. Anderson.
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson, aye. Mrs. Pope.
Aye.
Mrs. Pope, aye. Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno, aye. Mr. Hunt. And the chair votes aye. So it's 4-0. That brings us to the items of the agenda item, comments from the audience regarding items on the agenda. So, Carol, do we have any? Okay, we don't have any. I don't see any here.
So with this item, this is just hang on one second, I'll mute someone.
Technical difficulties. All right, I've turned it down, but I don't know if that means they've lost the connection. Because all of them went red. I'm no longer having any
That's
green
me.
lights.
Red is me.
Okay.
So see if they can hear you.
Can you guys still hear me? We're just getting feedback from the phone.
Let me try redialing it.
All right.
So if you want to just hang that up.
We'll hang it up. All right. We'll take a couple minute break while we fix our technical difficulties.
Thank you. You're joining a call with 4 other people.
All right. Can you guys hear us? It sounded like you got something happened. So Lisa, David, Steve, Jeremy, can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Lisa, are you still there?
Yes. Now I can hear you.
Okay.
Right now.
Okay. Steve, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Is Jeremy on yet?
He's not on yet, no.
He's not on yet? Okay. Can you see when he is
Yeah,
on?
I can actually, so.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So that brings us to the first business item, which is 2020-2021 Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan. Do we have a motion on that?
I'll motion.
We have a motion by Mrs. Pope. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mrs. Anderson. Do we have any discussion on the item, Mr. Lair?
Only that I want to reappreciate the Curriculum Instruction Office for leading this charge and making sure that we meet all the compliance. We have submitted this to SCOE for feedback prior to. We did bring this to you last Wednesday, and it was minor changes were made. We adjusted some at the very end, but otherwise we were able to get the feedback and make the necessary adjustments to meet the conditions of the plan. So we are happy with how it is, and we're happy to take any questions if there are any.
Just to say thank you to curriculum and instruction for all the work that they did.
I have to say, Tammy Jabali did all the heavy lifting. She gets the credit. She did a great job.
Kudos, Carmen Bailey.
Do we have any board member comment? Steve, I can't see. You have any questions or anything?
No, I do not.
Okay. Do we have anything on the computer, Carol? No? All right. So we have a motion, a second, and we are done with discussion. So I assume the motion is to accept this. We will do it by roll call. Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson votes aye. Mrs. Pope?
Aye.
Mrs. Pope votes aye. Mr. Bruno?
Aye.
Mr. Bruno votes aye. Scott, do we have anybody joining us?
Mr. Hunt is not with us.
All right, so chair votes aye, that's 4-0. That brings us to business item B, Resolution 10, 2020-21, resolution to initiate provisional appointment process to fill trustee position due to vacancy. And it says we'll need 2 subcommittee members, decide on the timeline for appointing an individual to the vacant position. Do we have a motion on this item?
So moved.
We have a motion by Mrs. Anderson. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Mrs. Pope. Do we have any discussion on the item? It does say we need to fill 2 subcommittee member slots.
Right. So the most important piece would be at first to please approve the resolution that declares a vacancy. Then the 2 other components would be identifying 2 of you who'd like to be on the subcommittee to just meet with me once the candidate applications have been submitted to verify that they are eligible to come forward for the interview. And the second part would be, what option do you want to pursue as a board? Option 1, which would allow us to fill the vacancy in October, at the October 21st meeting. The other, option 2, would allow us to get to the November meeting, which I believe is November 18th, which either one of those would fall in the mandatory timeline. So it's really the will of the board. Both would fall within the conditions of the 60-day for appointment. And in your backup, we've scripted out what it would look like for each of those.
Okay.
I would like to be one of those on there. I wasn't on it last time.
Okay.
so.
Okay.
Vote first.
So, yeah, let's vote first. We will do it by roll call. So the first part of it is to declare it vacant, and then we're doing a process. So, Mrs. Anderson.
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson votes aye. Mrs. Pope.
Aye.
Mrs. Pope votes aye. Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno votes aye. Chair votes aye. That's 4-0. And then you have to fill the 2 subcommittee seats. Mrs. Anderson has expressed interest in one of them. Anyone else on the board have interest?
If Mr. Bruno's not interested, I would like to be.
All right, I don't know if you heard that, Mr. Bruno, but Mrs. Pope is saying if you would like to serve, she will defer to you. If you do not want to be on the committee, she would like to be on the committee.
I will let her do that.
All right, so the 2 committee members would be Mrs. Anderson and Mrs. Pope. And then are we also deciding the timeline, or are we letting the committee decide the timeline?
It would be the board would decide as a collective. So option 1 or 2, would you like us to follow?
Okay, so option 1's October meeting, option 2 is November meeting. Is that correct? All right, do we have a motion for one of the options?
I motion that we make the decision in the November meeting.
Okay, we have a decision, or a motion for option 2. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
All right, we have a second by Mr. Bruno. So is there any board input on that?
Other than changing it to option 1, then no.
Well, I mean, to me, we know that I'm leaving, so the question is, do we want to go through an election and then have to replace 2 more after the election, or do we want to, I mean,
That
or
is
do we
my
want to replace
concern.
1 in October and then 1 in November? Because it just seems like, to me, that either way, it seems like there's going to be a November opening. So do we want to leave both openings till November? I mean, I won't be here, so I guess I should say I don't care, but I'm not sure that you want to leave both of them to that meeting, especially right after an election.
That was my concern, having
Okay.
2 vacancies and filling them in November, plus the election
Yeah.
would be kind of hard,
So you could potentially have 4 seats in November. and I'm just-
potentially.
Correct.
And it's not like I won't care just because I'm not here, it just won't be my problem, but I just throw that out for food for thought.
Thanks a lot, Tom.
Sure. So, I know you share that concern, Mr. Bruno. Do you want to discuss this at all?
I was thinking option 2 sounded good because we have people who are passionate who are running to be elected,
Okay,
and option 2 allows those who don't get elected to apply for the position.
okay.
that was my thinking then too, is
Okay.
that then you know who has been elected.
True.
Before you make that decision.
Okay. So, so one question I would ask, because I know some stuff has gotten contentious already, is that, I guess it's not really a question, just a statement that I would not want, even though I have no plans on being here, I would not want to see the November meeting get too cantankerous. I mean, I kind of,
The other piece right now, I know, Trustee Wilson, you're putting your hat in that ring, but at this point, we're really deciding on the one, when do we want that? Because if you, and I'm gonna make some up, let's say you resign effective the 30th of October. I mean, I don't know what your game plan is, that would then push that out. We wouldn't, it would be very close to get that one on the November.
Okay.
I do think it would be awkward to have 2 spots being filled in November. It just feels awkward to me, just as a full disclosure. I don't know why, but it just, we can make any of them happen. It just feels awkward.
okay. All right, so do we have Mr. Hunt yet?
We do not.
Okay. So, all right. Do we have any public input, Carol? All right, so sounds like it could go either way, but it sounds like it's been discussed. So if nobody has any objection, we'll call the motion. So the motion right now is to push off the filling of this until the November meeting. Mrs. Anderson. Mrs. Anderson votes aye. Mrs. Pope.
No.
Mrs. Pope votes no. Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
All right. Chair votes no, so we will table that until Mr. Hunt gets on the line. Then I guess in the meantime, since that's our last thing, I know it's,
The only awkward thing is since it is dealing with his vacancy, even if he does get on the line, he might abstain. Only
All right.
because it's kind of like filling, so,
Okay.
so the resolution is approved, really what we would do, we're basing it off the meetings that we have scheduled.
okay,
We could always, advice I had given was always to get on regularly scheduled meetings.
okay.
So I mean, if it falls to the floor, that means I have no direction. So then I would just go ahead and try to figure out how to put it on for next meeting possibly as a further discussion. I mean, that's my understanding. It was 2-2, there's no action, correct?
That just means it hasn't been decided, so I don't
Okay.
think that means the committee
Okay.
could decide it, which I guess doesn't help if the committee's divided. I guess the thing would be is, I guess where I would hope for is that if his resignation is effective the 30th and our next regular meeting's not until October, then
You're in the same exact spot as you are today.
exactly. So maybe that's just something we can discuss a little bit more. So let's,
I'm sorry. I can text him.
okay, yeah. And then, let's see. There's something that I wanted to talk about, but it's not on the agenda, but I think now would be the proper time, Mr. Lair.
Sure.
All right, so while we're doing that, I'm sure people around the community are aware of what happened the other evening, and it hit really close to home for me because one of the kids that was in that car, he was one of my oldest son's best friends. He sat in my house and played my piano. I know not many people have pianos anymore, but it was already pretty hard to accept, but the thing that was even harder to accept when we called my wife and told her is that with all these kids turning 18, one of the birthday parties was at my house, and all the kids, they're like, hey, G's dad is pretty cool, we'll ask him if we'll buy him some beer, without going into every detail of the conversation, obviously the answer was pretty much no, for numerous reasons. But what that did during that conversation is, you know, I didn't tear him up over it or anything. I just said, for numerous reasons, no, it's not a good idea. Just enjoy the hamburgers, enjoy the party. But one of the discussions that was a segue into another discussion where, you know, for people who don't know me, I was raised in a highway patrol family. I'm named after a highway patrol officer. I grew up with the Highway Patrol magazine, and every month seeing the pictures of the things that happen. So I'm pretty much, when it comes to kids and cars, I like to stress the importance to them. So even though I was never a high school drinker, we've always put it out to kids that, like, if you ever have any doubt, give us a call anytime, day or night. And I think, you know, what made it harder is the kid that was always at our house, we had that conversation with him. Hey, we don't ever want you doing this, but if you do, you don't feel like you can call somebody else, call us anytime, day or night. And I know that horse has left the barn, so to say, but I think one of the things, because it's something that I grew up around and seeing all the time, is that I think we really need to let our kids know, hey, we would rather, we're not going to bite your heads off if you call us for help for making a smarter decision, right? And so, I mean, I would just throw it out there for other parents if they haven't had that discussion with their kids, or for kids, like, if you've got friends that are doing something, you initiate the conversation with your parents. Hey, if one of my friends ever went out and did something and was in a questionable situation, would you be willing to go out and pick up my friend? Would you be willing to go out and help my friend? So I only bring that up because it's bad enough that it happened, but knowing that we had that conversation and it still happened anyway. And, you know, this is a kid that I expected him to come back to my house and play the piano some more. I expected to see him more. You know, I think he was leaving for the Marine Corps in 2 months. Just a really great kid that everybody in my house knew. You know, and I guess the one bone I have to pick is that sometimes young kids make decisions that aren't right, but, you know, somebody posted that these 2 kids deserved to die. You know, and I have to take issue with that. I'm just glad Jesus didn't think the same thing about what we deserve. But I cannot be in more disagreement that these 2 boys deserve to die, because I knew one of them, not as well as I would have liked to, and I'll never get that chance now, but I know at least one of those kids was a really good kid that if you ever took the chance to know him, you'd be like, hey, you know, how many kids still play the piano today, right? And so, anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because maybe we can have that discussion in a constructive way of, let's not have this happen again.
Very nicely said.
Thank you. Any luck on that?
So we are still, no, we're still 4 people online.
All right. So, okay. So, do we want to let this ride? Do we want to resolve any further discussion on this? I mean, it's not a hill I'm wanting to die on, since I don't assume, you know, that I'm going to be here anyway. I'm just trying to look at the way they'll play out. So, any further comment, or do we just let it go the way that it's going?
And if it stays, well, not a problem, but the reality would be is I would come back for direction
At the next
at
meeting?
the next meeting, which would then default it to it would have to be the November meeting.
Okay.
Because unless we try to meet beforehand to resolve it, you know, before September 30th, or
So if there's no resolution at this meeting, no resolution at the next meeting, it's going to fall to the November meeting anyway, because it has to be taken care of within 60 days. Is that correct?
Right, because
Okay.
what we're looking for would be is if it has to go to the next meeting, that would be the next meeting would be the one that we have timelines that we would have to start October 1st. to get everything done before the October 21st meeting. If not, that timeline gets pushed back. It's all within the 60 days, but either we just needed to know when did you guys want to try and interview the candidates, and then we had to back it up from there. So we were able to get 2 options.
Can we do a separate board meeting with this item when all board members would be present?
You would, yes, you would need to do it prior to Mr. Hunt.
I mean, like next week?
Yeah,
You
so
have to
be
do it prior to the 30th, right?
prior to the 30th is when his vacancy
Okay.
occurs.
So if we can arrange something with Mr. Hunt and get that scheduled?
What's gonna have to be done prior to the 30th?
Well,
If you want to resolve this without it going to November, we'd have to have a meeting before the 30th, because by then you have a
Why can't
resignation that's taken
Dale,
place.
Scott, and I just get together and resolve it.
only, I mean, you could.
Is the
The
committee,
the deadline has to be by October 1st. We have to post the vacancy, if we're going to fill it and interview on the 21st of October. The 1st is when we have to open the window up, because we go the 1st through the 9th, I believe it is, are where we seek applications. There's some posting requirements in there too.
I have to
So
get it to the newspaper several
So
days before that.
if
Okay.
if Mr. Wilson and Mr. Bruno are agreeable to that, the 3 of us could try to meet tomorrow, and I could report back if you're okay giving that power to these 2. I mean, I can hash them out in my office until I'll tie them in there
Right.
until they leave.
Well,
I mean, however you guys want. Again, I just,
And I don't know how Mr. Bruno feels. The way that I feel is whatever is easiest. I just know when Matt Friedman and I got elected to this board, there was some animosity amongst some board members. And I could completely foresee if you had 2 seats go to November, depending on the way the election rolled out, you would have some animosity with people, like, you did this or you did that. So I don't care one way or another. I would just like to see the courtesy that, and the way the board members serve each other, that November doesn't become some sort of vendetta fight where you end up with 2 people who are appointed, who are opposed to 2 people who are elected, and then we're back where we were in 2004. That's
Correct.
That's my,
Correct.
because I do believe that this board has, regardless of the people who have come and gone, has served very well as a body, and I think staff and everybody else, like when Matt and I got on the board, because the board had been in the news so often, we kind of made a pact with each other that our goal was to see how long we could go without the district being in the news.
Thank you for that.
You know, and so that's just what you know, if it's not an issue, it's not an issue, and whatever is easiest is fine with me. I would hate to see the November meeting. Oh, is that Mr.
That would be Mr. Hunt.
Okay. Hey, how are you? I would just hate to see that become a faction battle. So, Jeremy, let me catch you up a little bit. We are on business item B about the resolution for the vacancy that will be there by October 1st. So we already passed the resolution to say we're going to fill it, and then Nancy and Delray are going to be the subcommittee members. And then, so the last thing to decide is on the timeline. Option 1 means we go to fill it in the October meeting. Option 2 is to fill it in the November meeting. The vote right now is 2-2. There's one opinion that says, hey, you know what? Let's take care of it in November, and then the election's over, and we can figure out what the makeup of the board's going to be. And then there's the other side is, well, will there be? Is that a good idea to be filling 2 seats after there's been an election, or should we fill one of the seats in October? So hopefully I I summarized that fairly? People think I summarized that fairly?
Yes.
Okay.
What is the motion? Is there a motion, or is it just we're picking them? What was the motion?
So the motion in the second was to wait until November to fill the vacancy that will come open on October 1st. And that motion at this point has failed to gather the necessary 3 votes because there's 2 votes for and 2 votes against.
Would you like me to vote on that motion, or do you want me to make a different motion?
Either one, if it's, I mean, you can either say vote on that motion, or if you don't like that motion and want to do a substitute motion, either one would be in order. Well, I guess we should finish
Okay.
voting on this, but if you voted no on this, you could make a substitute motion, or a new motion, it wouldn't even be a substitute motion. Or if you voted yes, then it would pass.
Okay, so I would vote no on that motion and make a motion to fill the seat at the October meeting.
I'll second that motion.
All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Hunt to fill it in October. We have a second by Mrs. Pope. Just in the interest of fairness, any discussion on this from any of the members?
Hey. Sorry, this guy was it.
All right, I'm not hearing, Carol, do we have any public input on this item? All right, so the motion is to go with option 1 to fill the vacancy in October. So we have a motion and a second. Discussion is over. Mrs. Anderson?
No.
Mrs. Anderson votes no. Mrs. Pope?
Aye.
Mrs. Pope votes yes. Mr. Bruno?
I will vote no.
Mr. Bruno votes no. Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Mr. Hunt votes aye, and the chair votes aye. So 3-2, it is option 1 at the October meeting. All right, that brings us to future meeting dates. Regular meeting will be Wednesday, October 21st at 6 p.m. here at Riles, but in the multi-purpose room, not in this room. Are there any suggested agenda items other than the one we just put on? Do you have any, Mr. Bruno?
No, I do not.
Do you have any parting ones, Mr. Hunt?
No, I do not. I apologize for being late. So sorry.
All right. Okay, so that brings us to the last item, which is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn by Mrs. Anderson. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Mrs. Pope, only because we can't see everybody. I'll do roll call. Mrs. Anderson on adjournment. Mrs. Anderson votes aye. Mrs. Pope?
Aye.
Mrs. Pope votes aye. Mr. Bruno?
Aye.
Mr. Bruno votes aye. Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Mr. Hunt votes aye. Chair votes aye. We are adjourned at 6:29. Thank you.